Yeah.
And so then when you're kind of debriefing that icebreaker, I can be like, I went to every table in this room and everyone was talking about a scholar, a student, a kid, whatever, that had struggles and then overcame them. Like no one's talking about the valedictorian, and teaching the valedictorian is awesome. Like it's super fun. Like, yeah, they get it, but like that scholar probably didn't need me, right? Like they were going to do well no matter who was in front of them. They're going to teach themselves on the side if they need to. They're, might have a really invested family, might just have other teachers invested in them. But there's that scholar who just struggles, but keeps putting effort and keeps putting effort in, and that's what people were going to talk about in that moment.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. What happens when a teacher has to merge two distinct school cultures literally overnight? How do you build trust, create a shared vision, and rally a team in the face of massive, unexpected change? Today, we are going deep into the real, raw, and often messy work of culture building with a leader from the front lines. We are joined by Daryl Patteson, principal of CICS Avalon in Chicago. Daryl, thank you for being so open and sharing your story with us.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
The first thing I would want to start is from being a maths teacher, high school math teacher, to becoming a high school principal, to actually becoming a elementary and a middle school principal. How did that journey evolve? What happened?
Yeah, I spent the first 7 years of my career in the math classroom at the high school level. And, taught everything from algebra 1 on up to honors pre-calc, and really enjoyed it. And as I started the leadership climb, went through one of the other charter systems here in Chicago, got up to principal, and I kind of felt my alignment waning there. And as I was looking for my next thing, that recharge, a middle school, Avalon and regeneration schools came to me and were like, are you interested in coming to middle school? And I honestly was like, I'm not sure. It's something I've never done before. And I think getting to come to middle school has just been a huge boom for me. It's just, I get along with middle schoolers well. And I think that a lot of the things you learn as a high school teacher, principal, things are very applicable to that. Like I had to learn how to, manage fifth graders. They're a little more high energy than some of your high school students. But a lot of the skills are the same across the board, and you're getting kids earlier, and they're even more malleable. High school students are very malleable too, and you can teach them a ton. But imagine getting a hold of a fifth grader, and now this year getting a hold of kindergartner. It's like you have all these years in front of you to really push them. So that journey has been excellent, honestly, and it's been a real refresh to my career.
And I think one of the first stories I would want to start with, and it's kind of incredible in the fact that on 31st July, you figured out that you have to take over the entire K8 building and just not the middle school. The K4 team was yours on 1st August. So it's a massive leadership challenge with zero prep time. How do you do that?
The first thing I did was like, I gotta meet these elementary teachers, right? Like I got a whole team. I got a new dean. I have a new instructional lead, and we've passed each other because the way that Chicago elementaries are set up, they are K-8 buildings, but our network purposely separates K-4 and 5-8 into two very distinct schools, even though we share a building. And so it is a change. These people have seen me before, but they don't know me. My very first presentation, the elementary school team, was literally just like a get to know who Principal Patteson is kind of presentation. Where I'm from, I'm not from Chicago. I'm from Central Pennsylvania. I grew up next to a farm, not on a farm. There's a difference. But like, those are the kind of things I'm like, hey, you got to get to know me a little bit. And I also told them a lot of stories about past students, both successes and failures in that front. It's like, here, this is what we're connected to. And I really wanted to get them on, my page and like understand who this person you're going to be working with is, where I come from and what I stand for in a lot of ways.
And I think one of the things which you said, which intrigued me, right? Like, and it's something which we did before the podcast, was turn the cafeteria into a wedding reception. And I would want to understand, how did that work on the first day?
So I had this idea where, we are two distinct schools that are now coming together. And it really is like we're marrying the elementary staff and the middle school staff. And it was one of those, those shower ideas you have. You're like, this might work. So I called my director of operations on the way to school that day, and I'm like, I have an idea. Don't know if you're going to like it, but I think it's going to be good. And we're going to do this. We're going to do this thing. We're going to get white tablecloths and table centers. We're going to have a toast. Where I went through and was like, what is the big sign that looks like when you walk in and find your tables? And I mixed up the staffs and the ops team and our support teams all into different tables. Like, find your table number, go sit there. I dressed up that day. I'm more of a polo guy, but I had the whole suit jacket and tie on, and we did all those things. And it was just like I wanted to create a moment, right? Like this is a huge change for us. We don't all necessarily know each other, but we're going to have to know each other. And there's such expertise in both sides. There's so elementary has some amazing teachers and staff, and middle school has amazing teachers and staff. How can we actually use this to our benefit? Because I think my first thought was, what's the good that's going to come out of this? Like, I can't go into this like, hey, this thing got, given to me, the day before PD started, but I also can't use that as an excuse for anything. Cause like in the end, now all 500 kids that come to our school every day are in my ward and they need to learn. Right. And so I wanted to make sure the staff knew that this was the thing. And I was going to really focus in on building that culture.
As you should, right? Because looking at the future and like looking at different possibilities is more important than looking at the past sometimes. And it comes to creating that psychology, safety, and trust, and it's for everything, specifically whenever a leadership change happens or transition takes place.
I I know that one of my superpowers is bringing out the superpowers of other people. So even when I was coming up with a vision statement for the K-8 version, I was like, the last line is that this is a place that brings out the superpower of every person who comes into it. Whether it's for me in my head it's every kid, every adult. And so the first thing I started doing was like I'm going to observe and understand the elementary school staff. And it's like, where are you strong? And like, there's sometimes with PD all stars, it doesn't necessarily translate into the classroom. There's some people who are quiet during PD who turn out to be great in the classroom, and you want to get those people to start, sharing out more and those kind of things. So I'm just getting a feel for that, figuring out where people are great. And I think that, in the charter world, we do a lot of observation. There's a lot of feedback that goes on. Our school is really predicated on a lot of feedback. And so as I've been in classrooms, it's like, hey, I've seen you do this like excellent thing. I'm always trying to find that thing that you're really doing well, so that you're always hearing that positive. It's the same thing that we do with our scholars, right? Like you want to find that thing you're doing well, and then let's build the next thing, and making those quick actions while also finding what you're great at. And there's something to be said for coaching the strength to an even higher strength. And because if you always are hearing what you're not doing well, that psychology really breaks down quickly. And like you want to build people up to proficiency in things that they're struggling in, but you also, if someone's really great at data analysis, I want them to become absolute, data machines where it's like, oh, I see what this kid's doing. I make a fix right away. I jump into that. If there's someone who's a culture, savant, it's like, I want you to really hone that culture so that your kids are so bought in that, you can maybe have maybe you're proficient in data, not necessarily there. So I think it's like just finding the superpowers is huge for me, and putting people in places where they can succeed.
And I think it's lovely because figuring out what other people are good at and just building it up is the right way to go forward, because most people look at it from a jack of all trades perspective. But I think sometimes you need to be a master at one. Like you need to kind of hone your top skill instead of always being worried about the skill which you don't have, because everyone's good at something.
Yeah, it's so natural to hammer yourself for what you're not good at, right? You're like, yourself the best out of anyone, and it's like, oh, I know I'm not great at this one thing, but I'm like, if I can really convince you and let you see I'm viewing this, and where you can become truly great. And this honestly, this works with adults and and children of all ages. Like it's not a, it's I think that's one of the things we always forget is like, oh, you have to adjust your things for adult learners versus student learners. And a lot of times you don't actually have to do that. You're trying to find out what that kid is great. And I have to just like, I'm thinking of when I took this school over, there was a slide where it was like, this student had, 37 days of suspension. They went to the bathroom 6 times a day. How much time did they miss? And it was supposed to like invest us in keeping kids in the classroom. And then I actually met the student, and it turned out that she was brilliant. I'd heard all this like, oh, she's going to ruin your life. She's going to make your life the hardest. And she had struggled to that point, and she was heading to seventh grade. And it's like, first thing I did was sit down and talk to her and her mom, and like, well, what do you like? What are you good at? She's like, well, I like sports. I want to go, play flag football and basketball at my next step. And it turned out that she was reading above grade level, but like had a D in reading. And I'm like, make this make sense for me. And so it was just building that relationship. and it wasn't that it was a smooth sailing through seventh and eighth grade, but like the suspension numbers went way down. She was in class eighth grade, five A's and a B. Is sitting at an IB program now as a freshman in high school. Had already met the flag football coach and is ready to go. And you can do that same thing. As I was coming in there, I had, there was a teacher who they told me is like, oh yeah, she's just really bad at classroom management. We probably need to like move on from her. And I'm like, well, but she also is amazing at collecting data and making adjustments in the moment. So let's get her proficient in this one thing so we can use the skill that she has. And she had some of our best scores on our like interim exams last year, and we were just like telling her that she was really good at this thing and to like make that her superpower. So those are just like two quick examples of just, you know, don't write people off, especially at a young age, especially people who are new to the profession. It's just you have to figure out what they can do and push them in the direction, and then you still build up that proficiency at the same time.
I love the story. It just gave me goosebumps, right? Like hearing the positive reinforcements you have done because and I think, this is something which I'm going back to my childhood. I had one teacher who had that extra belief in me, made my life a lot more easier because they were just able to guide me through things which no one else would look at. And I could have been easily put in the troubled child category, but good at math, but troubled. But like, but yeah, right. Like it was one of those things which kind of helped me through understanding what my superpower looks like. And so
Mm-hmm.
really appreciate what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think the other conversation, right, was on how do we break the icebreakers? Because now that it's been a month and a half with the new teachers and everyone else that's come in place, and you want to build that conversation, you want to understand where they're at. So how do you create that genuine connection? Because I know the current middle school, the fifth grade to eight, these guys love you. But what about the new ones who have come in? They don't know who Daryl is and like how's he going to react? Is he angry or is he happy, excited? What's the status like?
No, I think that with breaking the ice, and I think I said this to you before, like people hate icebreakers, but they're such a great vessel for conversation. Like I think people are so used to icebreakers, and I think the one that I hate the most is hot dog or sandwich. You know, that internet arguments that happen, like is it a blue dress or a white dress? Like those are not what I'm talking about. I just thought of like just some examples of things that we've done. Like, what's your proudest professional moment? Like, it's a simple question, but what it's going to get at is something you have done. And I think the best thing that ends up happening is almost every, like you're going to see 95% of people are going to talk about that kid who struggled, who didn't by the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
And so then when you're kind of debriefing that icebreaker, I can be like, I went to every table in this room and everyone was talking about a scholar, a student, a kid, whatever, that had struggles and then overcame them. Then like no one's talking about the valedictorian, and teaching the valedictorian is awesome. Like it's super fun. Like, yeah, they get it, but like that scholar probably didn't need me, right? Like they were going to do well no matter who was in front of them. They're going to teach themselves on the side if they need to. They're, might have a really invested family, might just have other teachers invested in them. But there's that scholar who just like that just struggles, but keeps putting effort and keeps putting effort in, and that's what people were going to talk about in that moment. And then everyone gets to hear like about that, and we kind of have that commonality of, oh yeah, like it seems hard in the moment, but it's really the thing that you look back uh, and think of as great. And then like on the other side, I'll ask people what their biggest professional fear is. Like I don't want to ask you what your personal fear is, because there's so many deep conversations there that like aren't that professional work setting that you want to have, but like that professional fear. And I always share mine first, and I'm like I have a lot of ideas, and I don't always know if they're going to work. And my biggest fear is I'm not doing it right, right? Like if the thing that I do isn't the right uh, isn't the right thing, and so I'll lead that one off with just kind of like, hey, I there are times when like I'm gonna try this thing and it is a little bit scary to get out there. And then people share out that like, I'm afraid that like you're gonna have a bad observation of me and fire me on the spot. I'm like, well, no, that's not gonna happen. So like, let's kind of bring that down. Or they might share something like, hey, I'm switching to a different grade level this year. I don't know if it's gonna go as well for me in the future, or I want to advance. I'm not sure if I'm gonna get that promotion. There's just so many pieces to that, and like that also opens people, and like, hey, when you hear that person going into that professional fear zone, how do you help pull your teammate out of what could be a tailspin and into a positive interaction? So I think those are just like two of the samples that I that I like to go to because it really stops the conversation from being silly. It's still a conversation. It still creates that web of connectedness, but it doesn't, feel like a waste of time.
Yeah. And I think just adding on to it, like building grit and resilience is part of it. So sometimes fear adds on to it, and you can be like, okay. And even if the kids or even the adults, right? Like if no, everyone, even if they fail sometimes, and we also can fail and we can have ideas that don't work out, it's not on them. How do you dust yourself and get on with it, right? Like I think that's got to be built out. So,
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things too is that you're going to have a bad class. Like and even the best teachers have that class where it didn't land or someone did something they shouldn't have done. Like it's going to happen, and it's what you do the next day that matters the most. It's that future facing thing. It's like, okay, this happened, great. It's not the end of the world. Like every teacher has had that moment. I had those moments as a teacher. I have those moments as a principal. Like they happen, and it's how you adjust and come back.
and just getting from there to the other thing, right? Like I think one of the ambitious goals that your chart, like your school kind of follows is that the students should be in selected and enrollment high schools where they have to pass an exam, they have to go through an aptitude test, which is extremely difficult in the state standards. And it's only Chicago, and it's only where the parents are eyeing for, teachers are eyeing, even the support staff is eyeing. So, how do you get everyone to be aligned on this one particular goal? And what have you been doing for the same?
I love big, hairy, audacious goals, and I love that everyone centers on something. And I love line goes up on the state test, but like the state test score isn't always the most motivating thing, right? Like you want to find that thing that is actually motivating. When I got to middle school, my first batch of eighth graders were like a really brilliant group of kids, and they didn't get into these schools. And I'm like, I know you could get there. And so my first year here was just studying the process. We have, 11 schools in Chicago that are just like elite high schools, some of the top high schools in the country, and they're all public and available to you, but you do have to get in, like you said. And it comes down to your seventh grade core class grades and then an aptitude test. And um, I know from just talking to families, that's one of the big things. Like they want their kids to have excellent education. They come here because it's going to be safe and the kids are going to learn, right? And then they want the high school experience to be the same. And we have these amazing options. And so what I did my second year was one of my summer homework assignments was for all my staff members to write down like what is your biggest hopes and dreams for the kids that are in your class, right? And we had these kind of like low level things. It was like, I hope they just like find happiness and they have a career or a job or something. And I'm like, we got to think bigger because we have the opportunity to think bigger. And so I had said like about 20% of Chicago kids get into these schools. I said, let's get to 50 at Avalon. Uh, and then that we like rolled that out to staff. They're like, and like a couple staff members were like ready to run through a wall. We did it right before orientation. So I'm like, we're going to share this out tonight with families, and you're getting the first take on it. But I'm like, if I'm really breaking down barriers, if I'm really opening up doors for my kids, I'm getting them into these schools, and we're working super hard. Like, the seventh grade books, it's like, hey, a kid has an 89. Like, let's focus on this kid getting every homework assignment turned in the rest of the year because 89 is worth different than 90.
Yeah.
And so, A is worth more points. And it's like, it's not, you can't give it to them because they have to learn. If you give them A's and then they don't know how to do the test, it doesn't matter. They don't get enough points that way. So they still have to learn. They still have to earn it. It's not about, gaming the system, but like I realized what the system was, what parents and kids wanted, and what my staff wanted to see for the kids. And it was like, that's going to be the rallying thing that we're going to go through. And so by the time our goal is like for 3 years out, we know we're going to have to, really work on this, but in 3 years, we're going to have our sixth graders, right now, sixth graders, they're going to walk out in the store and it's 50%. And really our current eighth graders who are only 1 year on, a year and change under the BHAG, they're projecting down about 39% because I love to check out data and make probabilities of these things. And we have a chance to really make a huge dent in it and go up each year. And that's just become the thing. Like when I talk about the BHAG, I want to know what your role is. And every person has a role in that. The kindergarten teacher really getting kids to understand their phonics, their letters, their numbers is having a huge impact down the line. If kids leave each year successfully on grade level, then we can really do amazing things with them in that moment. And that, the security guard at the front desk, like if you're having a check-in with security guard and he's asking you what your grades are like, that just changes the whole game. It's not me asking what your grades are like, it's every person who's asking that question. Um, I think that one of the best teams we have in the middle school level right now is our paraprofessional team, and they're asking me to pull kids out and do small groups. And it's like, hey, can I pull this kid with me with the student that I'm dedicated to? I'm like, absolutely. Like, this is us putting ourselves in a position where everyone wants to do as much as they can for everyone they can, and it really does change the way that everyone operates when you're centered on a goal that is really ambitious and makes people think like, are they a little bit crazy over there? It's like, well, yeah, but we're going to do it.
And I think crazy goals work really well when you, specifically when you're looking at something which is as audacious as 50%, right? Like, that's a great goal. And it's a North Star metric that everyone in the school then follows. So it can start as small, but you need, there are things which have changed in the sense that there's no new technology that has come in. There's AI, because it's unfortunately or fortunately, that's the buzzword that gets thrown around, and kids can use it. Kids are using it. And how do you deal with that? First, do you involve teachers too? Like, are teachers using AI on their day-to-day basis, and then the kids understand it and then use it, or it's just our heads down, we don't know it?
It's definitely not heads down, we don't know it. And we know kids are trying to use it. And I think that one of the things is someone's writing in class versus what gets turned into you, and you can kind of like get that feel for like, hey, did you use AI to write this for you? Because AI is an amazing tool for research and learning more about things, and kind of has that supercharged search engine sometimes where it's like, hey, I can ask ChatGPT a question that can tell me more about it than anyone could tell me in a very short amount of time. And so I think everyone gets a little bit scared, and I know I'm getting up in the years in terms of working in Chicago and in schools, and I always want to bring that in because like it is a great tool, but if you're using it to do your work, you're not actually doing the mental things to be able to process and do those things. So they're just more conversations where it's like, hey, this is kind of in that plagiarism realm where you're not actually doing the work. You can use it as a research aid for sure, but you don't want it doing the work for you because then you're not doing the head and thinking. And one of the things I always want to do is push that thinking on kids. I think on the staff side, AI is an amazing tool because it allows you to plan and differentiate in a very efficient way.
Yeah.
So we've had some different tools on deck, and even like our IEP system is an AI IEP system this year. And you can go and be like, I need a lesson to reteach, multiplying fractions, and you can type that in, and it'll shoot out a lesson with a key for you, without all that extra work. Because you think about how much work teachers have to do, especially in the remediation realm. So again, I hope the parents listen to this. I'm going to shine on them a lot. But one of my parents came up to me is just like, hey, can I use this tool to make this lesson for my student? He's really struggling with this. Like he was getting the new concept, but then when it came time to do the negative numbers, he was just like, I don't know how to subtract negative numbers. So like, yeah, ask it to write you a lesson and do that mini lesson with him in homeroom or in a break in math class, and so he can build that skill up. So it's that just like small snippet is so powerful in terms of just like reducing planning time and being able to be really intentional about how we support kids.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other conversation to be had is, because the teachers are being supported out and they understand it, it also adds a lot more value. And coming to the same thing, because the pressure on principals is different. Sometimes you have to look perfect, sometimes you have to have a discussion on failure. You have to look at what is vulnerable, how do you take in a mistake from staff? Imagine if they've sent out something and they haven't realized what that communication piece needs to be, or even if they've made a error, right? Like, it's human to the errorness. So how do you look at it? How do you give the right sort of a feedback?
Uh, there's actually two prongs to it, and one is my own self modeling there. There are moments where you're gonna mess up, and how you respond is how your staff's going to respond.
Yeah.
And even like on our third day of school and like one of our induction days, getting everyone rocked up for the year, I'm really big on, I want my eighth graders to get more confident in their responses. And I was not nice to one of our top eighth graders, and he wasn't sharing out loud enough. And he was talking to his paper, and I was kind of like, Dean, take him outside and have him practice right now. And I'm like, that was just over the top, unnecessary. So like when they went back to homeroom, I actually went into the homeroom and like stood up there and issued my apology. I was really, that was really not how I want us to operate with each other. I got very excited about wanting to get you guys to this place, and it's early and we're trying to build that. And I should not have done that. I, apologized to the student privately and in that public setting. And then their homeroom teacher, who is also my instructional lead, was able to like lead a discussion about like why I did that. Because someone like, why would he do that? And it's like, well, he's modeling for you, like, and all of us, like, what happens when we make those mistakes. And then when teachers make those mistakes too, it's like you want them to do that same thing, but you also need to kind of coach them through it sometimes, where it's like, let's sit down and talk about what happened, why it happened, how are we going to build our own skills. I think like sometimes, pressure brings out the worst in us, right? And you feel that pressure and you act in a way that isn't consistent with how you want to be perceived by your students and the fellow staff members. So let's practice what that apology is going to look like. Because like, it doesn't change the fact that I'm still holding you to a high bar. I still want you to learn. I still want you to be bought into our culture. But there's also times when we're all going to make mistakes. I made this mistake, and this is me modeling an apology for you. And it has to be sincere. Like you kind of have to, smile through it, and you have to mean it, because that's just, if you go in and say like, I'm sorry that you didn't do the right thing, that's not an apology, right? That's just that's just blaming other people for something you did. But so you got to go in and you got to like take that ownership, and it doesn't always feel great, because like you're going into a room of 14-year-olds to say I'm sorry, and like there's this idea that we're supposed to be infallible and we're supposed to have this all-consuming control. But the real reality of it is that I'm going to mess up. I'm gonna miss something here. I'm gonna say the wrong thing, and as long as I'm confident enough in my own leadership and my teacher's leadership that I can say that and the kids are going to bounce back, it's really, really important. So I think it comes down to modeling, and then really coaching the how for people who are maybe more reluctant, and also making sure it is authentic, because those inauthentic apologies actually hurt even more. It's like, hey, I did this thing and now I'm blaming someone else, and that doesn't feel good.
For sure. I think one of the things that almost every human being does is self-justification for everything. We justify it, we defend it, hey, I'm not in the wrong, everyone else is. So just having that conversation is important.
Yeah, I'm the hero of my own story, right? To go back to the superpowers, like I'm the protagonist here. I don't make mistakes. I'm here to help the kids and make sure the kids are learning and do all these things. And then, sometimes you mess up, and it's okay. Like it really is okay. And I think that's one of the hardest things for people to wrap their heads around, is like, it's not the end of the world to make a mistake. It's a problem when you don't want to acknowledge that mistake and get better the next time, and make amends and close that loop with the kids.
Yeah. And I think coming from here, right, because we were discussing failure and how to work through that, I'm looking at the team as a whole. When you look at the team as a whole, there's going to be two conversations to be had. One conversation is, how do you make sure that the team is not a yes man? Like they don't pander to your questions, and they essentially are able to stand up and give you feedback, because we all have blind spots and sometimes we don't know our own blinds. And that's why blind spots, right? Like, how do you figure it out? How do you yourself as a leader take in that feedback, and how does it circulate? And I'm also wanting to check if you do any activities for those same.
Yeah, we do a lot of surveys. We do like formal surveys a couple times a year, and then we do a lot of informal surveys. And I think that one of the hardest things as a leader is taking the volume of feedback that you're going to get in those scenarios. But every time we do a survey, I go through, I like look at the numbers, like where we rated it, how was it based on last time, what if something did change dramatically, what changed about the school, look into that thing. And then there's the open-ended pieces that I always like to look at to pull out, like where is this problem? Is this an isolated one person problem that I need to have a one-on-one? Is this a trend across the school? And figuring out where that feedback's coming from. And then I always address them. Like I don't go into a vacuum. It's like, hey, here's what we're seeing. Here are the trends. And one of the trends was we don't have enough planning time. And I'm like, well, that's been a trend in teaching since forever. Like I'll do my best to figure out those pieces, but everyone could use more planning time. We know that. But there's also trend just like, there were too many changes to start the year. Think about the main change we started this off with, just running through, just like getting things and something. I'm like, hey, we're going to really work to settle into a schedule, a routine, those kind of things, that like that isn't a, uh, something that's blocking you from being successful. So I think it's just listening and opening those doors to actually read those things, actually have those conversations. And then my door is always open. Like I'm in the conference room right now, but my office is in the fishbowl, which is also like the staff bathroom. You've got a microwave in there, supplies are in there. Like I'm not a person who's going to hide away in an office. And that's something I actually had to learn from my first experience as principal. Like, oh, my office needs to be this sacred space. And like, really, I should be just as integral and central to the school, and I should be seen, all the time. It's something I just like cognitively had to change about my own practice of like, you don't need to hide away to do work. I can do work while I'm also watching the hallway and interacting with those kids in those like moments of, hey, I'm in line for the bathroom. I'm going to check out my grades, or I'm going to ask how my, behavior paycheck looks like this week. It's just, they're really powerful and set those things up. So I allow myself to have those micro moments while being in that space. And that means the staff's got the open door to come in. And so if someone sees something, especially the team that I've had, for 2 years, they're just very open with, what's going to be there, because it's really important. And if they do have something to complain about, I have a 5-minute complaint rule. Like, you can complain for 5 minutes and then we can move to solutions. Because if you're gonna, I don't have the 25 minutes to listen to every problem right now, but like, hey, you have 5 minutes to get it out, and then we can talk about how we're going to make it better. And people respect that by and large. It's like, hey, I know that you might need to get something off your chest, but like, I also need just to shift to solutions pretty quickly, because years go by fast. Days are long, years are fast. Same for parenting and being in school.
I love it. I absolutely love the 5 minute complaint session because it's something which I should be implementing in my team. Is what I've made a mental note. I've written it down. Uh,
Yeah, no, it really, like, I'm not against you letting me know, but I do need to make sure we get to something productive.
yeah, I think it's a great leadership technique for everyone, not just principals, is what I'm going to say, because I think getting it out of the system is important, but also coming to solutions is important. So, and like one of the two last questions which I do have is, if for anyone who's becoming a new principal, who's joining a new school, is just transitioning out from an educator to a principal, what's the piece of unconditional, not the regular or the norm advice that you would give, something which is unconditional or unique?
Ooh, yeah. One of the things that I love to do to see how people react is literal team builders. And so they're like, I talked about the icebreaker questions earlier, but I always have some sort of activity that's timed, that you have to build. So for instance, this year, our theme at the school is advance. We had a really good year last year. We want to make it even better. We're going to advance. And advance, I made a little logo. It's, got a tally font. It looks like it belongs inside of a race car. So I've been very race car themed this year. And so you had, 20 index cards, some straws, some lifesavers, and some tape, and a pair of scissors. Make a car out of this that'll roll down a hill. And at its face is like, why are we doing this activity? Well, it's like, you put time pressure on people. You put this, I'm trying to win the room. Like, it was literally teams, like, the first grade team versus the second grade team, third grade team, so on and so forth. And like, I want to win this. I want to win this thing. So now I've created this environment of artificial pressure, and I'm just observing to see who opts out, to see who takes the lead, to see who gets frustrated, to see who gives up. Like, it's like, when you put people in pressure situations, the most like authentic version of themselves come out. And that, working in a school, there's going to be pressure moments. A kid's going to push your buttons. A kid's going to do something they shouldn't do. Someone's going to mess up something. And like, that challenge is going to be put in front of you, and how are you going to react? And so this way I have a good idea of like, oh, when it gets hot in here, who's going to be able to jump up in there? Who's going to like really solve the problem? Who's going to be the one who's going to shy away and be like, I don't know what to do right now, I'm going to freeze? Who's going to be the person that just gets mad? Like, and like, those things come out, and it's a really interesting way of finding out things about your team that isn't just, do a strengths finder or do those things. And those things are highly valuable too, but I like to see what people do when the kettle's hot.
Yeah, for sure. I think when you do it in situations which is not high pressure, you learn a lot more things, even in low pressure, low stakes environment, and that can be replicated in high pressure and high stakes environment.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of things. I would also say like the one blanket thing is you got to lead with humanity. It's really hard sometimes, but like that's a person. That person has a life outside of the school, and you got to know what's going on. And like I'm not saying be friends with your staff. That's not you're not gonna be friends with every person, but you definitely have to know what's going on in their life and what's going to be affecting them. Because like it's you say don't bring it to school or leave it at the door, but that's just not how humans work. And you have to really be aware of those things and have those conversations and know your people. And it takes a long time, and it's the best return on investment you can get, even with the time it takes.
Absolutely. Before we end this, one of the things that we normally do is the previous person who came on the podcast, the previous leader, leaves a question for the next one. The previous leader kind of, this
All
was
right.
a very different conversation to be had, and it's completely different than the podcast we just had. Is I think their worry was that there's a massive mistrust in the whole education system happening right now. There is
Mm-hmm.
specifically in the public education system, but also it kind of bleeds down to charters, it bleeds down to private, it bleeds down to just the increase in the homeschooling and nothing else. The enrollments are not being very steady for everyone. So how do you bring this back into the school system? How do you gain the public's opinion and like change their view of how and what schooling is?
It's a meaty question because I think there's some intentionality to why it's happening, and so we have to work to counteract that. The number one thing that I thought of was just you got to do right by your kids and families,
Yeah.
and that looks a lot of different ways, in a lot of different places. But are you making decisions with the best interest of your students, their families, and staff in mind? Are you opening the doors to have conversations with your families about what's really going on? Like it's if every call is negative, the family's going to have a negative opinion of the school, and it's like, well, let's actually sit down and talk about what's going on so we can try to work as a team to solve these problems. And I think that we're trying to change the narrative about what school is and what it can be and what is possible everywhere right now. And post COVID has been really hard for that. I think people saw like, oh, we can put these on Zoom and they'll work. And internally we know it didn't work. Like kids didn't learn nearly as much as they did in person. But I think like we really have to keep pushing ourselves to open our doors to our families, have those family conversations, have conversations with kids, get to know everyone, and it has to be the school, the child, and the family working in lockstep to make it happen. So building that trust comes down to just like continually doing right by your kids, doing right by their families, and opening the doors for people to see what's going on and to have real conversations about the progress. I think that when we have tremendous growth, we really celebrate it, we share it out. When it's not there, we talk about it too. And I think that if you're hung up on what kids can't do or how things have changed and not adjusting to meet how they've changed, you're going to get left behind right now. And families going to continue to feel that it's not as valuable as it once was. And I think when kids come home and they can really name like, oh, I learned three different things today, and my whole character is building. I'm getting stronger in those things. And we do a ton of character conversations in our virtues, like perseverance, diligence, responsibility, integrity, respect is what we're talking about right now for the first month. It's like if you can live out these things, your family's going to see a change in you and how much better you are, and it's going to just really bleed into every part of your life down the line. So a long answer to a relatively short but challenging question, because building that trust is super important, but it comes down to if we can really show that we do the right thing for each of our kids every time.
Thank you so much. I think that was wonderful and couldn't be stated out better. We have to do it right for the kids. I think it's not for the money that we are in this, right? Like, I think it's definitely about the children. It's definitely about the kids and the students and the scholars that we have and everyone else associated with the same.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, like every kid that comes into your school is someone's son and someone's daughter, and like that's what their world revolves around. And when you operate with that idea that like we're really trying to push them to academic greatness and character greatness. It's not for, the personal glory for us. It's for what they're going to be able to do with their lives. And like when they sit in that first boardroom, in that first interview, and they're confident, they sit up tall, they, speak with authority, and they've learned a lot and they know a lot. Like that's game changing. And one of the things of why charter schools even exist in Chicago is to change that game, uh, is to provide families and students an option where their kids are going to be able to sit down with any company, any college in the world, and be on par with the person sitting across from them. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And thank you so much. I think it has been an
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful to speak with you, and the podcast was amazing.
Oh yeah, this is great. I appreciate it, and appreciate you having me on. And I'll have to brainstorm a good question for the next person.
Thank you.